Roller coasters come in all different shapes and sizes, and so do their trains and restraints. Some coasters have magnificently designed ergonomic masterpieces that provide comfort and support in all the right places, and others, well, let's just say they don't. In this series, I'm going to be ranking the different restraints from the very best super special S-Class all the way down to the miserable failure of F-Class. Let's start off with one that I think could be a bit controversial, the restraint you find on most of RMC's hybrid and wooden coasters, from Steel Vengeance to Untamed and Zadra. Now to me, this is not a good restraint, and I'm putting it straight into D tier. I love most of RMC's coasters, but the restraints quite frankly suck. The seat part isn't too bad, but the lap bar is terrible. For a start, it's super heavy and stiff, and requires a lot of force to push up or down to lift it up. There's also no automatic opening, so every time you have to force it open. Add to that some incredibly uncomfortable shin guards that seem specifically designed with the intent to give you bruises, and things get even worse. The real kicker though, is that in addition to a super heavy lap bar, these rides also have seatbelts with a metal buckle that can get caught right under the lap bar so it digs into your belly whenever there's negative G-force. It's a good job that the coasters that use these trains are so good that it makes the restraint tolerable, but otherwise these belong in the very bottom of D tier. Next we have a real classic, the PTC wooden coaster style train and restraint, as found on coasters like the Beast, Racer and even Megaphobia in the UK. Comfort's pretty high with this restraint, with a very squishy seat that helps to ease out some of the bumps on a wooden coaster. There's usually an additional seatbelt which isn't too intrusive, and the main bulk of the restraint is designed at an angle so that it doesn't tend to press into you, and is reasonably comfortable. Now during special events I've ridden these sorts of coasters with a very loose lap bar, however I probably wouldn't trust the bar alone to keep me safe in extreme airtime, but I guess that's what the seatbelt's for. You usually have enough space and freedom of movement to get a great feeling of the forces, and there's something to be said for the way that you can feel these trains flex as they move around corners, almost as if the coaster is alive and breathing. It adds another dimension to the wooden coaster. They aren't the most sophisticated or comfortable restraint in the world, but they are kind of dated. Though overall, I think this sort of restraint is a solid C tier. Plenty of room for improvement, but overall, pretty good. Next up, we have the B&M clamshell, and let's just get it said now, for me, this is S tier. The original clamshell design debuted on Apollo's Chariot in 1999, and it's graced every one of B&M's hyper and giga coasters since then. To me, this restraint is the perfect balance of comfort, efficiency and safety, but it still allows for plenty of space to feel the wonderful floaty airtime that's a signature of B&M hypercoasters. It really is the epitome of what a restraint can be. These are fast to load regardless of whether or not they have the optional seatbelt, and they seem easy to check for the ride ops as well. Where they really excel though is in the comfort factor, which is top notch. The seats are made of a flexible plastic that your body just sinks into, and if I could have one of these seats as my desk chair, I'd gladly take it. There's support for forces in all directions and a wide space for your thighs to press against during strong airtime, which means that these restraints never cause irritation and are comfortable enough to ride all day long. These seats feel really open as well, with your arms and legs free to move, and it's almost as if they encourage you to throw your hands up in the air. B&M clamshells have been imitated by many other manufacturers, from Gerstlauer to Zera, but none of them have quite mastered just how good these restraints are. They're some of the comfiest seats you'll find on any roller coaster, in my opinion, very deserving of their place in S tier. From the very best, we naturally turn to the very worst, and this next restraint is bad. Really bad, and quite frankly the designers at Zamperla should feel bad for ever creating it. It's the restraint you find on the universally hated Volair flying coasters. Clearly they've taken inspiration for the design from torture devices such as Iron Maiden's. As you walk into the restraint, lie down and are enclosed entirely by the back panel. The awfulness of these restraints just about matches the awfulness of the coaster itself, as you're awkwardly thrown around inside this steel cage. For added discomfort, there's also a firm plastic wedge that goes between your legs, which is clearly designed by a sadist, and when the ride undergoes acceleration and you're not bracing yourself properly, you can guess what happens and where that wedge gets pushed. For some unknown reason, a similar restraint is used on one of their flat rides, the Kite Flyer, and the constant centrifugal force just makes the crotch situation all the worse. The forward-abreast seating also makes heart-lining the ride impossible, and every movement the train makes just feels uncomfortable. This is undoubtedly one of, if not the worst restraints ever created, and it's fittingly on one of the worst roller coasters in existence. F tier.
I haven't ridden one of these in so long.
You're so lucky.
Oh, fuck! Oh my god! Oh, that was bad! Oh no!
Next up, we have the Intamin T-bar, as found on mega coasters like Expedition G-Force, Paratin, and Goliath at Wallaby Holland. Now these restraints are quite interesting. In general, they can feel quite open, which for enthusiasts is good, but for the general public it might be a bit intimidating, as a lot of your body is exposed. There isn't much in the way of support for your upper body from lateral forces, but lateral forces aren't really what these coasters that use this restraint are designed around, so all works out fine. They come with an additional seatbelt, which isn't too restrictive, but I do find that if you're marathoning one of these coasters that has strong airtime, the forces can get a bit uncomfortable on your thighs, as it's often a smaller part of your leg that's being forced against that restraint. Interestingly, Intamin hypercoasters from a similar generation in America have a slightly different design, where there are additional bars at the side instead of the T-bar that we find in Europe. Overall, these restraints aren't bad, so I rate them as a solid B tier. Comfortable enough, but there's still adequate support, although there's still room for improvement as well. Next in this episode, we have the modern Mack megacoaster trains, and their restraints. This is a lap bar which actually comes down like an over-the-shoulder restraint, but it doesn't actually have anything that goes over your shoulders. You'll find this in all of Mack's thrill coasters, such as Bluefire, Helix, or Copperhead Strike. These restraints are pretty comfortable, with a lap bar that has a decent surface area, and seats that curve around you to provide some lateral support. The restraints are very good at what they do, and allow you a good amount of movement and freedom, while still giving adequate support for extreme inversions and forces. There's plenty of room for getting on and off the trains, which makes loading a breeze, and checking them seems to be pretty easy, with rides like Bluefire operating with up to 5 trains at once, which can give these rides a crazy throughput. If I had a minor complaint, it would be that after marathoning a coaster with these sort of restraints for a while, I did sometimes get a bit of pain in the back of my thighs, but mostly they're a great way to experience a coaster, so I think they fit well into A tier. Finally for this episode, we have the train found on Premier Rides launch coasters, such as the widely cloned Skyrocket 2 models, Icebreaker, and Full Throttle. Sadly, this is another bad restraint. To start with, the trains are extremely cramped, and just getting on board of them can be a struggle. There's little room to walk across if you're on the opposite side, and just getting into the seat is far more of a hassle than it should be. The deep bucket seats do at least feel secure, but the lap bars are horrible and have some of the worst shin guards that you'll find anywhere that'll leave your shins battered and bruised. The lap bar support is also not good, and experiencing strong ejection on these rides is actually kind of unpleasant because of the way your legs get pressed into it. This abomination of a restraint is going into D tier, but there's an asterisk here because somehow some parks have made this restraint even worse by adding what they call a comfort collar. This extra seatbelt does nothing to improve safety or comfort and makes it even more awkward to load the trains as you have to awkwardly twist round and lift up this thick restraint over your shoulder. The Premier restraint with comfort collar makes an already bad design even worse, and so pushes that variant all the way into the depths of F tier. It's a real shame as Premier Rides have made some innovative designs lately, but they really do need to get better trains and restraints if they're ever going to be considered world class. Now I'm experimenting with a different style of video here, and I know there's loads of other restraints out there that I haven't covered yet, but I wanted to put this video out there and see if there's any interest for it. If there is, you can expect more episodes like this, else it will go down as another failed experiment that I'll learn from. Anyway, if you've enjoyed it, let me know what you think of these restraints in the comments, and if you'd like to see more from me, you know what to do. I've been Rollercoaster David, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again in another video very soon.